Hey, what's up, folks? I'm Xuan. I'm a software engineer at Meta. So today, I want to talk about React and memoization. Here, I have yet another to-do list. As JavaScript developers, we just really love to-do lists. So we enjoy the simplicity of the React code here. Until we open up the dev tools and we realize whenever we add a to-do or toggle a to-do, all the other to-dos are actually getting re-rendered as well. The badge here shows how many times each to-do has been re-rendered. So to fix this, what we usually do is to wrap the to-do component in a React.memo. But don't forget, the handle change is recreated on every render, so we better also wrap that in a use callback. Now, when we add a to-do or toggle a to-do, no other to-dos are getting re-rendered. That's fixed. But this is going to be a moving target as the app scales up. So later, we want to build an even better to-do list. First, we want to pass down visibility prop so we can use it to call get filter functions to filter our to-do list. Then, we need a second prop named the theme color so users can pick a color to theme the user interface. If we try this code out, it works, but the app feels pretty laggy and slow when we're picking color. And the reason is that changing theme color will re-render the blazing to-do list and to-do list, which will eventually call a getFilter function again and again. If we pay attention to the zoomed in number here, it's been executed about 200 times. To fix this, we can wrap the getFilter call within a use memo. So now, if we run this code again, just by fixing this filter, the app feels much more snappy. So this is the user experience we want. But speaking of developer experience, many of you may be like, nah, I really love React, but not this part. We understand. The goal of React has always been making it easier to build great user experiences, not harder. But if we look at this code, it's a lot of extra code to write, and it feels a bit noisy to read. But it's not just that. It's a lot of mental overhead to have to think about all these data dependencies, reference identities, and worry about accidentally breaking the memorization. The community have been thinking about what should be the best practice of using React now. And it seems like we're reaching a dilemma where if we want to write React without memo, then the user experience may suffer, especially when the app scales up. Or if we want to deliver the best possible user experience, then we as developers have to bite the bullet. So how can we fill this gap? The current thought has been that this economics versus performance issue is just so intrinsic to the model of React and doesn't look like we can optimize. Maybe we should use template rather than JSX, but we just really like the expressivity of JSX. Or maybe we should go back to class or start with mutating stuff so it's easier to track. What we think is something that has been missing here. Today, I want to give you a sneak peek of some research that we've been doing that we think could solve this problem for the future of React. To talk about this, we need to rethink how we do memorization. Let's take a step back and look at this code again without the memorization hook. At the end of the day, the to-do list is just a function that takes inputs from props and states and generate outputs such as UI and effects. And the need to create an intermediate value such as filtered and handle change to do that. To help with understanding, we can also visualize the dependency graph. Ideally, we only want to re-execute this getFilter function if to-do list or visibility has changed. So is there any way that we can do it without use memo? So here is where things get interesting. Imagining if we can have some kind of magic variables that can tell us whether or not its input has changed. Then maybe we can write this. Well, probably doesn't work. Then what about this? But what should be put in the else branch here? So essentially, what useMemo does is to give us the results from the previous render that has been cached. So if we can also have some memorization cache, then we can just write the same logic directly at here. We put the result into cache after some computation, and later we can read it back. To replicate use callback for handle change, we can just create it once in the initial render and then just reuse it for the rest of the time. At this moment, we've already reached parity with the previous code using hooks. But what else can we do here? Maybe we can cache the creation of JSX, such as add to-do components. And having to run this filtered.map on every render can also be very expensive. So maybe we can move it up to here because it shares the same lifetime with filtered, so they can be memorized together. And eventually, we can just wrap this entire block of code under a big if statement so we can memorize the return value, which means we effectively memorize this entire function inside out. So we can apply the same strategy to all components in our app, whether they use props, states, context, or customer hooks. At this point, I'm sorry if you've been feeling a bit confused, or maybe you already figured something out. So here is the takeaway ideas. What if you can just write React without memo, which looks as concise and clean as this? And there will be a compiler from React that can do this for you. All the magic variables actually compile outputs, and we will get memo cache from React. The generated code wouldn't be exactly the same, but I hope you get the idea that this is not magic, but science. So let me show you a demo of our current prototype. Here, we have an unmemorized version of the source code. We have the blazing to-do list and the to-do list component here. As you can see, nothing has been memorized. We also have to-do and add to-do in the source code. The application, therefore, is suffer from all kinds of performance problems that we mentioned before. You can see that all to-dos are re-rendered, and picking colors just feels really slow. The getFilter function has been called 300 times. Now, let's switch to the compiled version. I want to make it obvious that's not existed yet. So here I'm saying, I forget to memo, can you do this for me? Now the code is compiled. Let's look at the generated code. Admittedly, it's a bit confusing to read and likely to change, but in principle, it's similar to what we went through before. So let me first to clear out the number. Now, whether we are toggling or adding to-dos, other to-dos doesn't get re-rendered. Changing color also feels really smooth because it doesn't need to call any getFiltered or to rerun the filtered.map. They are just all memorized. So this is the research project that we codenamed as React Forget. It's an auto-memorizing compiler, and we hope it can eliminate the needs of manual memorization and dependency management for the future of React. Again, it's work in progress and it's not production ready yet. We're still researching into some of the harder problems, such as correctness in some tricky cases, slightly increase the code size, and depth to support. And in the worst case, it could even fail. So our next step is to prove this in the meta scale before we can open source and release an alpha. Finally, remember that this is still React. Our goal is to support all idiomatic code. It's very important for us to allow gradual adoption and be backward compatible. So behind forget, it's still JSX, it's still immutability, and hooks was actually designed with enabling such compiler optimizations in mind. So why not end this talk with something a bit personal? I started React back in 2015 as a design major student. And back then, I didn't know anything about declarative or functional programming, but I just feel like React was so different, yet it's so natural and addictive to use. Over and over time, these ideas that were behind the scene, they gradually emerge. Like immutability, pure functions, controlled side effects, they gradually came together and eventually clicked. So in all these years, when I think about React, I always remind myself to not forget. It's always seemingly bizarre and very unique choices that makes React. Thank you. I'm Xuan. Enjoy your React Conf.